بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. Welcome everybody to the Safina Society Nothing But Facts live stream. Our first stream back since last Wednesday. Yeah, Wednesday we streamed. And then, of course, we had the death in the family and we didn't stream on Thursday. So I first want to thank everybody who sent a lot of warm messages on my phone and came in person and all that, and I couldn't even get back to everybody, unfortunately, but I am here now getting back to everybody and thanking them for sending these messages out and all their condolences. And some ArcView students even gave a sadaqah of a well in Indonesia, believe it or not. So that's great, because you want to feel that your father is and anyone's loved one who dies is getting some extra reward and gifts in their grave. And that's part of being an ummah, is that we help each other after death. And in fact, it's said that asdaqul birri ba'd al-maut, the most sincere of bir, not the most important, but the most sincere bir of walidain is what happens after death. Because while your parents alive, your birrul walidain of them may be out of pressure. It may be for benefit. It may be so people don't say anything bad about you and things like that. So it may not be as sincere. But after death, although it's way easier, of course, I mean, just rereading Quran, making dua, nobody telling you what to do, nobody, the human part of it, the nafs part of it's not there. But it's more sincere. So in this life, it's more beneficial for you, the birrul walidain, while your parents are alive, because there's, again, a little bit of fighting your ego and fighting your nafs, especially when it's pretty much, I think, all the time, except for there's one phase where you're a young adult and they're still healthy, where everything's fine. You're almost like just like an older friend, but either you're young and you're being told what to do, you're a youth and they got to hold you, they don't tell you what to do, but they have to hold you back from hurting yourself and doing crazy things, which I have a whole phase of that, which I'm going to discuss here. And then you have the elder years where you're in khidmah, you're constantly serving, and that's not easy on the ego either. Although there's a lot of happiness in it, but it's not easy on the ego. So there's only that third phase where you're a young adult, mature, don't need to be told what to do anymore, and don't need to be held back from self-harm. And they're also still healthy, maybe in their 50s and 60s. That's where you share his friendship. And that's where Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib said, in his famous saying, he said, Omar, do you need me to change that file?
No, it's a PDF. I'll convert it.
Okay. Wait, what did I send you? A Word file? Okay. He said, لَعِبُوهُمْ لِسَبْعٍ أَدِّبُوهُمْ لِسَبْعٍ صَاحِبُوهُمْ لِسَبْعٍ ثُمَّ اتْرُكُوا الْحَبْلَ عَلَى الْغَالِبِ, which means you play with them for a period of time. 7, of course, we know that Arabic, what it means. It's about 7, 10. So your relationship with them is mostly play. It's not all play either. Okay, it's mostly play. Of course, you have to teach them some manners before 7. And then أَدِّبُوهُمْ لِسَبْعٍ, which is teach them, educate them, teach them manners. And for us, I mean, manners is also fight your nafs. There are some people who don't teach their kids to fight their nafs. And the kid's entitled, brat. You're actually doing harm like that. It's a harm to society. Your kid is is going to be the first victim to this. Nobody's going to like him. That's number 1. Number 2, the third phase. That's no second phase. Third phase is sahibuhum lisab. Let them come around and see adult life. They should come and mingle with you and observe adult life. And then let the rope go. you can let go of the rope. It's almost like you're training a horse, right? You can let go of the rope. Al al-ghalib, in most cases, around 20, 21, 22, 23, 25. Pretty much that's it. The raising is done. I don't want it today to do just this to be viewed solely as a live stream about a single person who's my dad. Reason being is that what is that benefit to anybody, right? Because it means something to me, right? It may not mean something to others, right? That's number one. Number two, even if it does, sometimes it's like tooting your own horn. Let's say someone's dad is all famous and stuff. Then they start doing, tributes and all that stuff. And you're really just tooting your own horn, let's be honest, right? So I don't want that to come across like that. So that's why I called this Tribute to Fatherhood, to the concept. Because if it's one thing that my dad cared most about, it was fatherhood. Like his son, he cared most about his son because he didn't have any other boys. And so I got 100% of the attention, believe it or not. And there's a lot of good in that. Definitely more good than not. But there's also a lot of pressure in that too. Because when you're the only son, and I have a sister who's older. So playmate wise, you had nobody. And when you get in trouble, and I look at my kids now, they don't hold it in when they get in trouble, because as soon as they go back to their siblings, at the very least, their siblings will distract them. And that's why it's good to have a lot of kids. They distract them, and none of them carry any feelings more than an hour, because your siblings will distract you because they're in a different wavelength. So to put it in a physics perspective, when there's only one wavelength in the house, you're going to be on that wavelength forever, pretty much. But when there's like 4 or 5 different people in the house, you're always going to be off. Whatever wavelength you're on, it'll be adjusted. So I noticed that. in kids who have siblings, is that they never carry things. Whereas if you're the only kid, and then you go up to your room after you got in trouble, that was it. You just sat there thinking about it the whole time. Okay. And that's one of the things that my dad used to do, was he used to actually end it. He used to say, okay, you got scolded, it's over now. And I'm thinking to myself, well, yeah, but I can't just turn my emotions on and off. And he would say, I said it's over. That means stop being upset and be happy now. So he was really big on emotions have to have reasons. And you have to be in control of your emotions. You can't let something drag on. In our household, subhanAllah, I mean, there was no such thing as saying I'm down, I'm depressed. First of all, is there a roof over your head? Or did you eat dinner? Did you eat breakfast? You got 2 parents alive? Are they dying of cancer? Or did they die in war? Like, we brought the ni'mah level. You're blessed. That was brought to the lowest. And the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever wakes up and he's mu'afan fi badani, his body's fine, and he has a place to sleep and he has a bite to eat, then halas, you have ni'mah, right? You have ni'mah. The Prophet is saying the truth because he's looking at it from the perspective of the afterlife. That I know what all you need to get through. Like, if I tell you advice about high school, Prophet is telling us, I know all you need to get through this life, and that anything that you think is painful is actually literally irrelevant. It's literally irrelevant. Before you die, you'll forget about it. And after you die, you most definitely will forget about it. And if you go to heaven, you won't even remember what you forgot about. Okay? So it's the same thing. If there's a kid who's in high school right now, and what do I need in high school? Firstly, you don't need to be popular. You don't need to have the latest. You think you need those things. But in fact, all you need is you need to be part of a sport to get exercise. You need a couple good friends. That you definitely need. You don't want to be a pariah in your school, and you need good study habits, and get out. Get the degree and get out, right? Get some good experiences and have some fun and move on, right? They may think they need so much. I want this to be something where I think it's a good sunnah to do for the community. The Prophet ﷺ said, mention the good things about the deceased And at the masjid at the Azat, I just sat back and I just told some stories about my dad. And some people said, we want you to expand on it here, because it wasn't so much about my personal stories, because as I said, that might not be relevant to somebody, but it's about what we could take away from it. Because if you're good, and if you're trying to be good, you will take the good from, you will inherit the good and you'll see the good from the people who die. And if you're a bad person, you'll inherit the bad stuff. Like I said about the brothers of Yusuf, they were good, but they did something bad. So bad people who attribute themselves to Joseph's brothers, they end up mimicking the bad part of Joseph's brothers, which is kill in the day, cry at night, and lie about it. That's literally what they did, right? So you have people now who say, yes, we're from the sons of Israel, literally doing the same exact thing as their forefathers. So they inherited the bad part. If you're good, you inherit the good part. I'm not going to get into this now, but I will at some point talk about a Times of Israel news story which published a study saying that where are the Beni Israel, the Palestinian people? Genetically speaking, the overwhelming population of Palestinian people, they descend back from the sons of Israel. An overwhelming percentage of current Israelis go back to Khazarians and have nothing to do with the sons of Israel, genetically speaking. So, but that's a story for another day. So you want to look at only at the good, but there's another thing too. You ever notice how people talk about their parents and they really talk as if this was like a walking saint on the earth, right? But in reality, he's probably just a regular guy. Here's a question, because who defines reality? Does not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say, I wipe away your bad deeds and multiply your good deeds? One of the signs of that is people only speak the good about you. And they say good things about you to the point that they give an image that this is some wali of Allah walking on the earth. Whereas, hold on, what I remember is he's a regular guy. No, yes, he was a regular guy, but Allah, through his intention, multiplied his good deeds, removed the bad deeds. So it truly is as if he was a wali of Allah on the earth, because that's how Allah records his deeds. And where do we get that? From Risala al-Qushayriya. There's one of the biographies in which I think it's like Fudayl ibn Iyad or somebody. He's making tawaf and he hears people talking about Fudayl in front of him in the tawaf. And they say there that Fudayl, he never sleeps at night. He always prays every night. He's praying salah. And he fasts every other day. And he said, Wallahi, there's not a single night in my life that I stood in prayer from night to Fajr, yet these people say every night I do it. And there is never a single time in my life where I fasted every other day, yet these people say I do it. So from that we say, one of the husn al-dhan we have of that is that's what Allah wrote for him as thawab. Whatever he intended, Allah wrote for him the thawab of salah all night and the thawab of fasting every other. That's literally the meaning of he multiplies your good deeds and he erases your bad deeds. The sign of it is that that's how people will talk about you in this life. So I used to think, oh, everyone just exaggerates about their dad and their mom. But I have a different take on it now. How Allah created that feeling inside of you to think of them that way, because that's how he's rewarding them. And I hope that that's the case. So this is a tribute to fatherhood, because we have a society that's fighting fatherhood, and there's a whole culture, and there's a dark cloud, there's a dark wind that's blowing in our society, and it's taken over so much, and it's against nature, and it's against the dad. And the father, and if you look in the seerah, while the orphan is such a big deal, right? It's because literally a father stabilizes your house, and he stabilizes your mind, and he literally stabilizes your life. I believe that when Allah wills to shake up society, he creates men, great men, and takes their father away. Because you have a genius who's unstable. And his instability will create a new world. Like he'll break up this world order that we're in, and he creates a whole new world. I mean, one of the best examples, if you ever read the biography of Steve Jobs, this was an unstable genius. There's no doubt about it. Most people that you see out there who have this obsession to do something and to make change, and it could be for good or bad or neutral, like Steve Jobs, it's just technology, it's neutral. They have issues with their dad. When you see people that are off a little bit and they're on the edge, because they don't have a dad, they're on the edge of society and they don't feel welcomed or wanted by society. So they want to change society, and they'll change it for good, bad, or neutral. And you see that happening all the time through society. But people who do have dads, they're the stabilizers of communities. Just growing up, to start getting into what we could call a specific story intended for a general purpose. I'm going to repeat this throughout because I really do care that this is taken as a general call to everybody to realize how important fatherhood is. And for people to do this, when your dad dies, sit around and let us know who he is. In the masajid, that's why the Prophet ﷺ said, make mention of the good things about your dead. Well, number one, let us make dua for him. How can I make dua for a complete stranger? But if you tell me what he did. Now, and everyone's dad, if they're present in your life, will be good in a different way. Some people I know right now, when they give a eulogy for their dad, they're going to talk about their dad's feats in business and how he used the money for good. Or they'll talk about their dad's feats in dawah. Or they'll talk about their dad's feats in other things. Okay? My dad's feat was actually in fatherhood and parenting. That's what he cared about more than anything else. I know that for a fact. And I used to think, oh, he's not that great at this, he's not that great at that. And I come to the conclusion, he wasn't that great because he didn't try for those things. He didn't care so much for it. But what he did care was raising a good offspring. Okay, that's what he cared about, and I have reasons to believe that. And I think everybody in our family knows how much he gave to this subject. All right, and so much so, even other parents used to bring their kids to my dad. They used to say, "Come and teach him," and it would come in the guise of chemistry lessons or math lessons or something like that, tutoring. But in fact, the kid was like off. And the dad doesn't know how to parent him. So they literally bring him to my dad, right? And he had a way to set things right. And his way were two extremes. One extreme of like kindness, not just kindness, but fun. And the other extreme was take your pick. Saddam Hussein, Joseph Stalin. That's how I used to look at it. Who is it going to be today? Saddam Hussein, Joseph Stalin. It was such an authority that you just backed off. Like, don't even mess around. And that's why I say strong dads are stabilizers. Whether you like it or not, whatever you think of the rules or not, that house is going to be stabilized. And I felt that when I was young. That, oh, if my dad's here, oh, shoot, okay, we got to sneak. We got to do other things, right? You're like that when you're a kid. And then when he's not home, if you went on a business trip or he's late at work, oh, it's party time. My mom was very, she didn't have a lot of rules. But then after 2-3 days, like, oh, shoot, things like feel unstable. And also not as fun. Like when there are some limits, then there's a definition of what fun is. But when everything's okay to do, nothing has any meaning anymore. So let's get to the beginning of this story. And I have some pictures. I didn't put a lot of pictures because, again, this is a specific story meant to make it a general thing. That's why I call this tribute to fatherhood. All right, Omar, let's fire up the first picture. Doesn't everyone look great in those old black and white photos, right? What is it? What's the reason? I think the lens wasn't so specific, or wasn't so good, actually. So you didn't see the blemishes in people's faces. And the lighting seemed to be... There's like one standard lighting across the board, right? So one of the themes that is important, I think that it's the most important theme, is that my dad was always very close to the brokenhearted people. And there's a reason for that. He himself was on the outs in his family, meaning that when he was 1 year old and back in 1945 in Cairo, his dad divorced his mom. And weirdly, he went with his dad. He should have went with his mom, but he went with his dad. And he lived his whole life up until about age 23. Up until the age of 23, he lived with his dad and 2 aunts. That's it, in a small home in Al Abbasiyah, right in the middle of Cairo. So right in the city life of Cairo. And it was like the shabby area, the poorer area, the folky area. So now what happened on the flip side of town was that my grandmother, she went on, remarried, and had 7 kids, 5 girls and two boys. So my dad had 7 half siblings, and was sort of, when you have 7 kids, that every day is a party, right? But he's sort of left out of that. Now, that's not to say that he didn't have a good relation. He had a great relationship with all of them. And from what I saw in Cairo, they really looked up to him as their elder, and they really honored and respected him. But nonetheless, that's what I saw later in life. But in the beginning, you don't know how things are. And they're not the only people involved. When you have a family, there are cousins, there are grandparents that have no relation to you. So the stepdads, your mom remarries, right? That family has no relation to you. So they may not have the same tenderness towards you as a child. So you go to visit your mom, and it's not the same. Okay? It's not the same. And I believe that was one of the reasons why he always had a affinity to people who are on the outside of things. And his entire adult life, all I remember him ever talking about was the oppressed, the people who are downtrodden, the people who are pushed aside. And even when he later founded a masjid, he made sure to name it after one of the Sahaba who was like that. So he named it Masjid Bilal. And that's the mosque that my dad and his 2 friends, they founded over in Tom's River, and maybe some other people. And he was part of another masjid, which is now a very successful mosque called Masjid Mustafa. But before that, it was called the Islamic Center of Ocean County. And I'll tell you a little story about that too. All comedy, in my opinion. So that's like the number one theme. And it is true. Psychology is true, is a science that is all about pattern recognition and can yield you some truths. But these won't be absolute truths. They'll just be speculations. And they could be high-level speculations. So the speculation here is that your relationship with your mom and dad will literally dictate your emotional state. Your emotional state will dictate your life. That's literally how it is. That's quite literally, how easy it is to predict where someone's going in life. If a girl has a bad relationship with her dad, her confidence goes down. If your dad is like expressionless, he doesn't give you confidence. But if your dad is always there, always with you, taking you everywhere, doing all this stuff, that kid develops such a confidence. And I think that my dad didn't have those 2 things. He didn't have those 2 things. You don't live with your mom, first of all. When you do live with your mom, she's got 6 kids. Right now, if you have a family living together in the same house and you have 4 or 5 kids, you don't always have time for your kids. Even if you stay home, right? I mean, how much time are you going to have in the day from when everyone comes back and settles down and you have dinner? So now we're talking, let's say you have an early dinner and it's 6 o'clock by the time you end the dinner. Until 9:30 when everyone has to go up to sleep. How much time do you have for anybody? And how much time alone? Even if you're talking all the time, but you're together in the room, how much alone time do you have? So when you see that your parent is taking time out of their day to be with you, it gives you such a level of confidence. You don't even know that you have that confidence. You think it's a default. And you don't understand weaker people, and you don't understand broken down people. So literally things skip a generation. So I personally think that he didn't have a lot of that, because he never told me anything about his dad. I don't know nothing about my grandfather. So I think he was one of those quiet people. And in the 40s, that was the norm. You didn't talk. You went to work and you came back, and that was it. Not a single story did he have to tell about his dad. So that tells you when somebody now experiences that, now they're going to do the opposite. They're going to be the most expressive and most involved dad. And that's why people say things skip a generation. And sometimes Allah takes something away from somebody so they can spring forth and do a far greater job to somebody else. And I think that's what happened here. That's why if you're a dad, you can't not be expressive. You can't not be around. You're not in competition with your kids. And some people are. I know some people who out of spite won't talk to their kids. Like there's like an ego thing. You can't have that. That's like that means you love yourself more than you love your kids. We never had that. If I ever got in trouble, this idea that I'm going to ignore you and not talk to you, that never existed. You just got in trouble and that was it. And then 10 minutes later, you get called down and you watch TV together. Turn the TV on. And that breaks the ice. And that was obligatory. It never happened that I got in trouble from my dad and it carried over 2-3 days. No, it was one volcano. Some people, they have like a simmering thing. They'll be upset. 1 or 2 words be said, but it'll carry. No, with him, it was one volcano that you basically never ever want to see erupt. Mount Vesuvius erupted. And that was it. You're cooked. You are cooked. You go upstairs, you lick your wounds, and then you're going to get called down. Well, you better be smiling on the way down too, as if nothing happened. So you learn to, that was his thing. You have to have a reason for why you have emotions. You have to control your emotions. Turn it on and turn it off. So it was a little bit of a sandpaper personality. There was some sandpaper to his personality. So when you go to Cairo, then you go to New York or Jersey City, it's all sandpaper. You know what I mean by sandpaper in the personality? You know sandpaper, right? You get some sandpaper in your personality, some roughness. So he could tell you something was so stupid that you just did, and then expect you, as soon as that conversation's over, to get back to normal, right? That's what I mean by sandpaper. So he wouldn't be like, you know what, I think that when you talk to elders, when you talk to your uncle or your so-and-so, you try to look up and be nice. No, it wasn't. There was no sugarcoating like that. It was none of that. It was, why are you talking like that? Talk like this, right? Have some manners, blah, blah, blah. There was no sugarcoating anything. And it was all just bitter pills. And then as soon as that was done with, you got the message? Okay, good. All right, now sweet pills. Well, then we just go back, turn it on and off. So I think that some parents need some more sandpaper in their personalities. I can't stand it to see dads literally afraid of their kids or entitling the nefs of their kids. You're producing a little monster. Listen, you got to listen to this. Some of you parents out there, you're producing entitled kids. There was never a time, not one time, that I went to school and what many people do today and defend their kids. There was never a time I got defended by my dad, to the teachers. Okay? His message would be, he's yours, the skin is yours, the bone is mine. That was what he would say in American parent-teacher. The parents would be like, what? The teachers would be like, are we supposed to call? Like, I think he eventually stopped saying that when he learned that there was something called DIFUS, Child Protective Services. But the ideal was that, like, this is not going to be a relationship where he's going to rat out the authority to his dad and his mom and dad are going to step in. And I don't think anyone in America in the 70s and 80s was doing that. There were no parents did that. It was not a thing. When your teacher got you in trouble, the teacher was right and you were wrong. It was not a single time in which this ever happened. So he would say, the skin is yours, the bone is mine. Right? And every one of our elders who went to school in the 50s, the teacher carried around a ruler and he wasn't measuring things. He was using it to hit. Right. Yeah. And I asked him like how they would do it in school. They say you put your hands out and he'd give you a little whack on your hands. Right. And I'm not like advocating that, but I'm saying that that's how things were. And so authority to us was a big thing. He loved authority. And that leads us to now, he comes to America in 1967. And America's like passing out green cards like it's like water bottles. Passing out green cards. You have a degree in science, come, green card. You got a degree in whatever, chemistry, whatever. So him and like 5 other guys all lived in New Jersey as chemists. Sheikh Yasser Fahmi's dad, same thing. He came over on the same thing, chemist. And my dad initially tried to get a job in California because he loved California. And he until forever he loved California, but there was no chemistry. There wasn't an industry in California. The industry was here. And before that, though, he worked for the Jamjoom company. I wonder if they're still around. Jamjoom. Oh, this guy, Abdul Ghaffar Jamjoom. We used to see their posters. Hazim Jamjoom, I think, is from the family. He's a movie maker now. But the Jamjoom, oh, here it is. Jamjoom. Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of, he's in everything. He was in petrol eventually and pharma and all these other things. So my dad, the most money he made was with the Jamjoom company. And I think it was Abdul Ghaffar Jamjoom. Saudi, no, he died a long time. He died a couple years ago. But Saudi billionaire. By our standards today, billionaire. Probably in his day, millionaire. He had a home in Cocoa Beach, home in Switzerland. Somehow, my dad ends up working for him in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. And he just loved my dad. My dad spoke English. There was a time when Saudis loved Egyptians. So he became the head of all Western operations and had the right to negotiate contracts for Jamjoom and bring in. He would negotiate, and of course Jamjoom would sign the contract, but he would negotiate deals and made a lot of money for that. But going to Saudi Arabia meant that my sister would not be able to go to school there. And there were no yet American schools there. She would have to had gone to a European school for high school or something like that, and that was out of the question. So he ends up leaving that job for the sake of his family. So that's a good deed, right? It's unfortunate. And who knows, maybe there was some other way, at the end of the day, he left that job for the sake of his family. And that's important, to be there, to be present. You can't underestimate these small decisions that in your mind is small, part of history, but it's important because you could end up with a whole nother life. Okay. And Jamjoom was a blast. We would go when he would visit in Virginia. He had, there were 2 towers in Virginia. All the Saudis lived in there. And he had a Yemeni assistant. He was one of those billionaires that just got the same guys around him his whole life. And even if they don't know how to do a job, he trusts them. So go learn how to do the job, right? And it was just like partying all the time with Jamjoom. Like if you wanted to go for coffee, you didn't go to like a coffee shop. You went to the Four Seasons, right? Just for lunch or something. That's how wealthy this guy was. So in any event, migrate to America, live in America, and end up in the small town called Toms River, New Jersey. And that's because the company that he ended up working for, he would hate for me to say this, but they always go to towns, sleepy little towns, where they could dump their chemicals in a river or something. And he defended them to the death, but I think everybody knows they were dumping chemicals. And the company was called Ciba-Geigy. So that's what took our family to Toms River, New Jersey. And it was beautiful because it was literally less than a 5-minute drive from the beach. And that's where I grew up. And it was the same home from up to first grade. After first grade, we moved to another home, and we stayed in that home. We just sold it, right? So it was a very stable life. And one thing I learned from my dad is that, and it's not something that he taught like in words, but I experienced it with the community. And even with him, it's not about the perfection of the relationship. It's about the length. Because when a relationship is long, trust develops. So there are a lot of friendships that we thought, I don't know if this is going to be a friendship. Or a lot of times, even my dad himself, sometimes you'd be upset with your dad. You'd be upset. You'd be angry, right? I don't think I should have gotten in trouble for this. I don't like these opinions. I don't like this, that, and the other. But it's the length of a relationship with somebody that makes you just forget about those bad things. And that's one of the things about my dad, I would say, and that's why I say, subhanAllah, people talk about their parents' afterlife as if it's a saint walking on the street, whereas, or the saint that walked on the earth, whereas he was just a regular person. But Allah judges you by your intent, and He judges you based on your context. So I believe personally that when He wipes away sins and multiplies good deeds, it reflects on the tongues of people, and they do actually start talking about their parents as if he was a wali walking on the earth, because that's how Allah is rewarding him. But the truth of the matter, you got to say the truth of the matter, because sorry, not the truth, but what we perceived that person to be. That's the reality of the person, how Allah rewards them and forgives all their sins and multiplies their good deeds. That means people don't talk about all the bad things they did and really talk a lot more about the good things they did. But our perspective on the earth while we're living with that person is not that. Is not that. So there's a lot of times I'd be upset and like have a bad experience. And keep in mind, it's just me and him. There's no other third person, right? So a very good thing is very good and a very bad is very bad. There's no one to distract from it or water it down. But there were also so many good experiences that they made me literally forget the bad ones. And that was what's amazing, I think, about the length of a relationship. And isn't that the state with our deeds? Our deeds it's like an ocean. And every day, every minute of the day, you're putting a deed, either a good deed or a bad deed or a neutral deed in a bucket of water, in an ocean. And that's becoming so big that if you do mostly good deeds, let's say 3 out of 4 good deeds, you literally wash away all the bad deeds. And all the good memories wash away all the bad memories. And I personally think, again, if your heart is good and your intention is good, the bad memories will go away and the good ones will stay. And that's why you might have 2 people have the same experience with somebody and they'll have total different biographies of that person. And they could be, let's say, even twins. Twins, let's get 2 twins who live this exact same life, same years, same everything with their parent, and have them write a biography. You're going to probably see total different biography, right? And we want the true biography, not what you're saying for the public, because there is no such thing as like a neutral biography. Everything is perspective, and you yourself are a changing creature. And if you're somebody who wants to see the good, you're going to see the good. If you want to see the bad, you'll see the bad. If your heart is good, you'll see the good. And if you're even trained on what good qualities are like, you'll see a lot of good qualities. And so on and so forth. So we continue now. Childhood for me and my dad was soccer. That was the first and number one thing that I remember is soccer. And he identified that soccer for him was like, this was like the un-American thing. This was the ethnic thing to do, right? And that's the first memories. And that's why when you look at Sayyidina, he said, play with them for 7, because that's what he's going to remember. He's going to remember the play. We used to play in the back so much. We used to play in the backyard. It felt like every day. We play in the backyard, that when it came Saturday for the games, I tore up the whole league. Like everyone was at a level. I was like, I just tore up the whole league. I think I played all with older kids, and I was smaller, but my footwork with the ball, it was almost unfair when I was young, right? It was literally almost unfair. I scored every single game I would score. Multiple goals, right? I just do by myself. And so there was an Italian coach, and my dad helped him out. And eventually my dad became a coach, but anyone who was arrogant, my dad ended up fighting with him, had a fallout with him. My dad was a filter. If you had arrogance, you would never get along with him. If I brought friends home from school, like if I invited friends over, it wasn't like that, just bring them home. But if I invited them over, he was like an arrogance filter. And if you couldn't laugh at his jokes and you weren't humble, you weren't nice, he'd eventually have a fallout with this person. So the leaders of the soccer league, I guess, were like that. So he had a fight with them. And one of my earliest memories is he's having a fight with them, and then he drags him and says, let's go, we're leaving. Then he got kicked out as coach of the league. Then we found a guy named Mr. Cranston who said, oh, this is an asset. This is an ethnic guy. He's from some other country, so he knows a lot about soccer. That's how Americans look at it back in the day. What do the Americans know about soccer? So he called him over to the side and said, listen, I'll be the coach on paper, but you actually be the coach. And that was so fun because we tore up the league. We went undefeated. We won tournaments. We won so much, right? That was in soccer. And of course now someone said, oh, you missed a story about your parents. So how did your parents get married? So I said that my dad lived with his two aunts and his dad. On the other side of town, my mom lost her mom when she was 14 years old. So she had a single father, right? And so they ended up getting married. The aunt, my dad's aunt and my mom's dad ended up getting married. So when they got married, that's how they got to know each other. Then 1967, my dad went back in 69, got married, and then brought my mom over after that, I think very early 70s. So that's the history there. Now, growing up, we were, again, very early on, if there's arrogance, he's not going to get along with my dad. He will have a fight. He's not going to just say, I don't like that person and walk away. That's what normal people do, right? I don't like to deal with this person. Let me just not deal with him. No, he is going to have a fight. And that was pretty much how our whole family was basically protected almost from arrogant people. You wouldn't be part of this family, or you want to be friends with us. You wouldn't be in our social circles. There was going to be a fight and a conflict if you had arrogance. And sometimes it was in people's homes too. And it was like, oh my gosh, this is not the time, right? One time a guy brought up a subject. We were at their house and he told my dad was talking and he didn't like the other guy didn't like the conversation. So he said, all right, close up this conversation. My dad was like, what? You're the one who brought up the conversation. Now you don't like what I'm saying. So you say, close up the conversation. I'm not your son. I'm not your kid. Fight. Right. So, it was always, and when you're young, that's exciting, right? Sometimes it was embarrassing, like at the bank, for example, fight, that's embarrassing. But when you're young, that stuff was fun. I'm telling you. And it was fun. And to go run back home and tell my mom what happened and my sister what happened. And that's what happened at the Islamic Center of Ocean County, our first Muslim encounter. We were not identified as Muslim. We were Egyptians. That was the identity. And when in school, I thought, okay, I don't even know what it is. I used to ask my dad, what are we again? And he'd say Egyptians. And he'd show me on the map where Egypt was in Africa. He'd pull out the atlas, right? And that's where we're from. So I'd go home. I go to school now. And I went to school at a time. My dad saved all my school pictures and report cards and everything. If I showed you here, it was basically the school picture of all white kids and a little tan colored dot, right? And that was me in all the pictures. That was my head, my face. So there was no such thing as diversity. It wasn't even a thing. And I wouldn't know where we're from. I guess we're from Egypt. So people would say, where are you from? We're from Egypt. I'd go, where the heck is that, right? So now in school, you start getting 3rd grade, 4th grade study world history. And that's where you open up the books. Chapter 1, Mesopotamia. Chapter 2, Egypt. I was like, oh, this is like, and the art, the masks, the all these other things, stuff was really cool, right? And that's when I started thinking, hold on a second. Yeah, maybe I'm the tan kid in the school, but we come first in history. There's no European or American in the whole history book until the last few chapters. So I don't know what you guys think you are. I think I may be the only minority kid who walked around with a superiority complex, right? And we were well off. We were wealthier than these kids. I would go to kids' homes. It was much smaller. And so that does have an impact. Maybe it's not good akhlaq, but it does have an impact. You realize, like, hold on, we have an older civilization. We have the art is amazing. the pharaohs, they knew what they were doing in terms of art. And then we're well off. And constantly my parents would sort of say these derisive things about American cuisine. Every single time. They don't know how to eat, right? It's hamburgers and hot dogs. Ketchup should be thrown in the garbage, right? Ketchup was banned in our house. Banned, not bring it in the house. You could not bring ketchup in the house. That was a sign you becoming an Americanized, right? And it's like, for example, we had steak one time on a summer day, and my friend was over, and he said, Mr. Elmasry, can I have some ketchup on the steak? Lecture, right? You guys don't know how to eat. You don't put ketchup on steak, right? All that stuff. So Islamic Center of Ocean County was the founder. I think he was a chemist too. Was a Pakistani guy, and he said, "I need you to help me out in the mosque." And that's how my dad started going to the mosque. And we weren't even a practicing Muslim family, but soon my dad became vice president of the mosque, and we would pray in the masjid, but we didn't do any Islam outside of that. But he started feeling that this is hypocrisy, right? So he started little by little praying, little by little, showing up to the masjid. And it was this it was a little storefront. We were not used to this stuff. We were a family of doctors, and we hung out with the doctors. And we didn't go to these little storefronts and dusty and all sorts of people. It was all new to us. But he did it. And then eventually this transitions to the next phase where some things happened that caused my dad to really get into the deen. And that is that his company, Sibagaigi, started cracking down on them because they're dumping. And the township wanted them out. So they knew they're done. They're cooked. They're like certain other people who go and abuse and then they get kicked out of the country, right? So these chemical companies would go out there and they would dump, and then they would leave, right? And so the chemical company was moving to Alabama. Of course, they found some poor mesquite town that would take them and accept the dumping for a while. Danny DeVito almost made a movie on Tom's River, on this dumping situation. Yeah. And so they told him, you're on the first cut. You either have a choice. You have to go now, either now or you're out of the company. So he was out of the company. So now with that free time now, and now you're feeling terrible too, he started going to the masjid more. And then comes the time where the Egyptian Shaykh Omar Abdulrahman also was sort of retired in New Jersey. He retired in New Jersey. And he started going around preaching, and he had a very, very strong personality, extremely strong personality that my dad became very attracted to. Okay, Omar, let's see some good pictures here. Go to images. Get one with sunglasses. No, get that one right there. Yeah, put that one up. That's a good picture. It's ominous. Well, he was the villain. Sheikh Omar Abdulrahman was the villain in. Put the villain one up. Who cares? Actually, yeah, keep looking. Maybe it's a better one. Yeah, that one's fine too. And he started going and attending all his lectures. And all the Egyptians were going to attend his lectures. He was a powerful personality, and he was from the Afghan Jihad. So anyone at that time in the early 90s that was part of the Afghan Jihad, they were like legends. And we thought that was like, these are the heroes of the Ummah. So now we start going more to the masjid. I'm now entering middle school, leaving elementary school, going to middle school. And we start doing this. And I said, okay, I guess this is where we're going in our family. And that's when he literally taught us everything we knew about him, about Islam. Like, we didn't even know hijab was fard. You know that? We thought it was just manners of old women. Like Salat al-Fajr, I remember Fajr prayer itself was something that we just did it when we wake up. And it's said to do it at 5 a.m., but we didn't know we had to, like, The idea that there's something fard, the whole thing to us was like mandub, right? Everything was just mandub. Everything was recommended. So I remember there was even a convert who said to us, hey, the prayer thing here says 5 a.m. Do I have to wake up at 5 a.m.? And I told him, nah, we don't do that. It just says that on the paper, right? When you wake up, you can pray. So it started off very slow, but then when this sheikh got involved, he was a very powerful personality, and my dad would go to every Friday night lecture that he had. He would do a Friday night talk in a different masjid. And he was political, of course. And he was very much anti-government. And the jihad, people who went to the Afghan jihad, the jihad ethic stayed with them, and they all wanted to overthrow their own governments when they got back. So his group was in conflict with the Egyptian government. You're not ruling by Allah's law. You got to go. And this was a problem that at an international level. Why? Because the Egyptian government is propped up by the CIA for the sake of Israel. We all know that, right? You could talk this talk in the middle of Africa. Nobody would care. Overthrow your government all you want. But you can't do this in Egypt because Israel is it's a guarded site. So the buffer has to be guarded. So in 1993 or 4 or something, no, 1992 maybe, the president of Egypt came to America, had a meeting with Bill Clinton, and one of the things he said in his speeches there is that the source of terrorism is the mosques of New Jersey, believe it or not. So then all sorts of stuff was cooked up, and that landed 11 Muslims in jail that were followers of the Sheikh. And at that point, now we're not just in Islam and we go to mosques. We're like in the news, and we're the enemy. So literally, I would say my first year being really conscientious that we're now practicing Muslims before we're Egyptians. The Egyptian side, we stopped going to those parties. We would go to parties with the Lebanese. There were some Iranians, but mainly the Lebanese. And, they eat, they cook, and they dance and all that stuff. And there were Christians, Muslims, Shia. We didn't even care. Being ethnic, being from that part of the world, that mattered. Speaking Arabic was what mattered. We left that life. We started going to the masjid life and following the sheikh around. So now we're like demonized. We're the bad guys. We're talking 1993. We're the bad guys. And the whole U.S. government is coming down on you. And that's not going to go down easy. And it didn't go down easy. But this is basically, I think, where my dad got the bulk of his good deeds, to be honest with you, is that he stuck with the sheikh. He eventually became part of his legal team as an investigator, as a paralegal, as an interpreter, and he ended up storing all the sheikh's tapes and books in his house. So the sheikh would record every speech he gave, and he would store it in our attic. They were stored, or they were systematized and put in these towers, basically, towers of tapes. And he would put them up there, and they would be like Surah Al-Baqarah tafsir all the way down, so on and so forth. And then he had his library, Sheikh's library, because now the Sheikh's in jail. And now that he's on the legal team, and the press is covering this story every day, the case, the trial, like the local news, and they would bring sketches. Omar, go get some of those sketches. Type in Sheikh Abdulrahman, type in sketch in yeah, let's see.
Was it one of the slides you sent?
No, it wasn't on the slides. That was a newspaper, which we're going to get to.
What was it called?
Type in Omar Abdulrahman trial sketch. And they would make these sketches, and they would always show up in the 7 o'clock news. And I, again, thought, oh, my gosh. There it is. Just to show that sketch right there. Okay. And there was a snitch. His name was Emad Salem. He was the snitch who worked with the CIA. With the CIA and the Egyptian intelligence. He was a double agent for both. Right? And he's the one who was behind all this. And so the trial would go on, And every night you're watching the trial in the news. And as a young kid, I thought, this is the coolest thing in the world. Although we're the bad guys in this story. But sometimes you relish being the bad guy. Okay. So here it is. In 1993, trial, blind sheikh, etc. All right. No, you don't have to. It's okay. So that's basically, now, it all hit home much closer than we ever imagined in the spring of 1994. Right? In the spring of 1994, now they want to intimidate the people who are helping out. And so they do this nasty thing where they could have just filed a warrant to pick up all the tapes, the cassette tapes of the Sheikh's speeches. They would have had the right to get that. But instead, they did it in a manner that was, I guess, meant to intimidate. So I'm going to school. I'm standing at the bus stop. I see a red car go by. I see the same car go by again. Turns out that was the FBI agent waiting for me to leave. Like, I guess that's their courtesy. So they don't do it while I'm still there. As soon as I got on the bus, the house was swarmed. Our house was swarmed with FBI agents, and they're all wearing their jackets, and they raided the house. They raided our house, and we had a huge house with a courtyard and everything, and all Spanish-looking house, and they took everything that they wanted to take, but they did it for the whole day. And the media was there. All the neighbors were there. Omar, go to the next, that picture there I got with that. And there it was in the New York Times. You see that? You know what, Omar, maybe just get the newspaper, clip everything except the newspaper part of it and expand that. Because I have the whole New York Times archive. So that's May 3rd, 1994. That was a game changer, because that didn't happen and to people. That was not the norm. You don't get raided by the FBI, right? And your character is tested. Everything about you is tested. And after this, to be honest, it takes a lot to get shaken up after this stuff happens, right? But I didn't see my parents got shaken up. They didn't backtrack a thing. My mom and my dad. No, my mom deserves the credit too. And my sister deserves the credit too, because she didn't backtrack either. No one backtracked. This was wrong. This was like a dirty trick that they did, that they shouldn't have done. But we're not backtracking a thing. And I would remember hearing all the conversations of my dad on the phone, right? And he would, tell stories about the shuyukh of the past. Right? And the sheikh himself, he said to him all sorts of stories of how Ibn Taymiyyah was put in jail. And he said, it's khalwa. If you expel me, I travel the earth. And if you kill me, I'm a martyr. And if you leave me alone, then I do my dawah. Right? So of course, the sheikh was basically his number one source of go-to theologian was Ibn Taymiyyah. That's what the deen was at the time. At the time, even ask Imam Zayd, he went to Egypt like in the early 90s, everyone was on that same wavelength. And that's what the wavelength that we were on. If you wanted to know something about the deen, you went to the Quran first. If you don't, you find that, you go to Sahih Bukhari. If you don't find Sahih Bukhari, then you look in Ibn Taymiyyah's Fatawa. And that was it, 3 books, that's all you needed. And if you want to just start learning about the deen, you read Sayyid Qutb's book on, this was called Salafi Jihadi. That's what it was called back then. But it was the Afghan jihad, not the ISIS. And ISIS not even jihad, it's Mossad. Anyway, ISIS is a Mossad operation. And Bin Laden, Al-Qaeda, that came after. Like, these were, like, they cared much about the Afghan jihad most. And so that was the wave that back then, and that was the ethos. So, but when you get this happen, raided by the FBI, and then you hear all your parents' conversations that night, and there's no backing down. There's no stress. There's no like, did we make the right decision? Did we make the wrong decision? None of that. Then the next morning was D-Day. because when my mom went to her medical practice, it was all, she didn't see patients. It was a line out the door of patients coming. We need my file. Give me my records. We're going to another doctor. Because she was a family practice, right? Or not family, just for children, pediatricians. So moms and dads, they don't want anything to do with this. So the next few days was literally no patients were seen, everything canceled, and everyone's just asking for their papers to leave. And my mom said, okay, leave. So think about that. You can't buy that in an education when you see that kind of strength and commitment to a cause. So leave. And she saw Allah will build it back up. So my mom also deserves all that, because I remember that period of time too. No patients were seen for a week, just giving people's files out. When they counted, they found that she had so many patients, that two-thirds of the files were gone, right? And no dinner invitations were coming, I think, for about a year, except from two people. The Lebanese Christian down the road, he was a doctor, and a Jewish dentist that was a friend of ours. They were our biggest supports. Now, I can't blame the Muslims, because they may support you on the inside, but they can't come near you. They don't want to get, if FBI snooping around, they don't want to get involved with that. They could be next. Whereas the Lebanese and Christian doctor, no one's going to come after them, right? Jewish doctor. So those guys were great. Antoine was one, and then Winoker, Dr. Winoker were the other. So they were great, and they were big supports. And it was a tough time for the family, though. Whenever it's hard to walk around places and everyone's looking at you. You go to the supermarket, everyone stares at you. You go to soccer, everyone stares at you. You go to the masjid, people that want to stay away. They don't want to get raided, right? But in our house, like, that was it. This is it. So imagine your first year in Islam, you get thrown in the fire just like that. That's going to form everything. That's why when shuyukh and people in general are weak-willed and they have weak backbones, it's like disgusting to me. But then again, I don't want to blame anyone, because the Prophet ﷺ said, "An-nasu ma'adin." People are different metals. Some metals are really soft, some are are strong, and some are brittle. So it looks strong, but very quickly it breaks. And so I would say that is the number one. I was 14 years old when this happened, right? It happened in May. So I just turned 14 at that time. And then all these, right after this, our family had paid off all our debts and everything. We decided to make Hajj. And that was a way to wash away all this stress and wash away all this stuff. Question, you say, why didn't they arrest your father? No, what they raided for was the sheikh's tapes, his lectures, and any paperwork. There was no crime that my dad committed, right? So there was no crime he committed, so that wasn't an issue. The sheikh arrested was on a conspiracy charge to blow up the Holland and Lincoln Tunnel. So people outside of New York don't know this, but New Jersey is connected to New York through two tunnels. And there was a conspiracy was to blow that up in the Statue of Liberty. Of course, it was all hogwash set up by a guy named Emad Salem. There's another official story that's a lie. Like, the idea of the government lying was, to me, is like, this is what you're raised up with. They are liars. Like, it's a complete political thing. The president of Egypt literally came the year before and said, we got problems. Your guy's in New Jersey. You need to arrest this guy. He's fomenting revolution in Egypt. CIA can't have that. Israel can't have that. So they had to put him away. It's like obvious. It's not even something that anyone contests. And Emad Salem is the spy. He's the FBI informant. He set the whole thing up, right? Huh? No, different one must be. I think they got the names messed up, to be honest. But this is the guy who caused all the trouble. and he cooked it up. His name is Emad Salem. So we go to Hajj. 1994 Hajj was such an amazing trip because it was pre-modern Saudi Arabia. Put those pictures up, Omar, and scroll through while we're talking. This is pre-modernized Saudi, and before you had to go with a group. So when we went there, we ended up just renting out an apartment for ourselves, and Omar's putting up pictures of that guy. This is the informant, okay, who trumped it all up.
Informant was a Muslim?
Of course, yeah. He had to know the lingo, right? He had to pray and fast and go to masajid and all that stuff. And he turns out to be a snake after all that time. And there was a Sudanese guy too who was an informant too, not just him. So anyway, we go to Hajj, and here's the funny story. Edif, were you here when I told the story in the masjid?
I was.
We go to Hajj, and our tent is with the Moroccans. And back in those days, people were very ethnic. The people were not mixed. So when you went to the Moroccan tent, you got 100% traditional Moroccans. When you went to, let's say, the Sudanese tent, 100% Sudan. Even the clothes didn't swap. Everyone had their own clothes, their own everything. So in the Moroccan tent, we're trying to sleep in Mina, and suddenly these Moroccans get in a circle and they start doing dhikr. They start saying, La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah. And me and my dad look at each other. I'm like, what's happening? I've never seen this before in my life, right? And he's like, what is this, right? And that became like, we just look at each other and say, these people are crazy, right? And I'm saying, why are they saying La ilaha illallah? Like, he's like, I don't know, but we're at Hajj, so we should all know that there's only one God, right? Why do they have to keep saying it, right? Now, little did he know, okay, that this is a little foreshadowing Allah's putting. But it was literally something for years. We would laugh at it. We say, remember those Moroccans wake us up in Mina and saying, La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah. Why do you need to say this when we know there's La ilaha illallah? Why do you have to keep saying it out loud? So that was like a joke that for years we would laugh at. And we literally didn't understand why they saying La ilaha illallah. We didn't get it. And we just laughed at it. But time passed, and that Hajj was amazing. And the high school years now were really, really great period of time. So we went to Hajj. We came back. The trial was over. Of course, the Shaykh and all, they all lost. But that chapter of life was over. And a new chapter began where, just stick it. No, don't go to that one yet. Not yet.
What happened to the Sheikh?
Went to jail. Maximum security prison. You could just go to a regular screen for now, until we get to the next part. But then the high school years were very, of course, those are your most formidable years, and formative, I mean. So we end up getting back accepted in the community. But my mom's practice comes back, and it grows actually even bigger. It's from Allah, right? Not everyone knows the histories of things. And there weren't archives. You couldn't Google what happened. So everything is back to normal. Now comes a period of time where, as an only son and the only child in the house, just me and my mom, my dad in the house every day. So all it was for me was, and this is what a good upbringing I think is, it's school, it's sports, and it's my Muslim friends. That was life. Life was so simple. And my dad tried all he could to get me up to my friends who lived 40 minutes away. The nearest Muslim community is 40 minutes away. We had a small community, but it wasn't really like a active, vibrant community, and I didn't have the same friends. His friends were 40 minutes up north. And it took my dad a lot of sacrifice to drive me up north. And I think if you're a parent, you really want to create an idyllic childhood. Idyllic childhoods, to me, I would define it as things are pretty stable. Every day is the same day. And that allows a kid to use his imagination, to use his, to think, to try to create his own fun. And for me, the weekdays were come home from school, either had soccer practice or didn't, because I was on the school soccer team. And then dinner, same exact time every single day, dinner. As soon as my mom comes home, we have calculate an hour, we're going to have dinner. And then me and my dad are going to watch the Rangers game. And we watched hockey. If there was no Rangers game, then I just went and did my homework upstairs, hanging out with my mom. There was no one else to hang out with. And sometimes that quietude, it causes you to think a lot and to develop depth and to develop deep ideas. So you have whatever Allah takes, whatever Allah accepts, gives you, you have to make the best of it. So that was what the day was like. And then he would try to take me as much as he could up to my friends. And then I got into hockey, and I played hockey for years. And that was also, the big part of the day is Sunday morning games, practice on the weekdays. And he took me to all those. And we would just go to soccer practice, hockey practice, listening to Mike and the Mad Dog. If you're from Jersey, you know what that is. If you're my age from the Jersey, New York area, you know what that is, right? That was like radio gold. Going to practice, listening to Mike and the Mad Dog. And now what's the point of all this I'm saying is that there are sometimes that time is, you think it's a waste of time. You think it's nothing, but it's actually something. And it builds up. Because I'm saying this because that's what you remember. Therefore, it has value. It has meaning. And that's what we would do. For 3 years, because I did high school in 3 years. That's what we did. It was hockey. It was soccer. Then it was hockey. Then he would take me up to see some Muslim friends that we had. And now we formed an extremely tight-knit support group, because all the dads were trying to do the same thing for their sons. All of them wanted their sons to have Muslim friends, because we all went to public schools. There's no such thing as going to, there's no Islamic school except way up in Jersey City. And then finally now things started to change, because after a while you get dried out. And I think my parents realized that I'm sort of getting dried out, and it's hard to try to stay pious through the years in public school. Although they did so much, my dad, he would take me up 40 minutes drive, and he would wait and work in a diner until I'm done playing with my friends, then drive me back. That's a big sacrifice, right? So at that time, in my first year of college, I felt like, hearts dry out. It happens if it's not being moistened up. And I think he noticed that. And so as soon as I got involved with Sheikh Hamza Yusuf by listening to those cassettes and lectures, he encouraged it, because it was something. Even though it was a total different teaching, you could say, almost, from the Egyptian sheikh we just talked about. Egyptian sheikh was fight oppression, mostly. Yes, there was religion, like study Quran, study Hadith, study Ibn Taymiyyah. Now, this was a whole nother set of names we were learning. He was talking about Zuhud, talking about Mauritania, talking about the Burda, talking about madhabs, Maliki madhab, talking about tasawwuf. These are all new things. But because the main concern was to have some Islamic influence, he encouraged it. And he liked the early talks, Sheikh Hamza's early talks. He liked them. But he thought that Mauritania and Morocco, these people are crazy, right? That's literally what he thought. Like, these people are not, why don't you go to Azhar? Why don't you go to Egypt? Why don't you go to Saudi? And that's what it was in our world. Why all the way in Mauritania? Who knows what's happening out there, right? Who knows what they are? So it was mixed, because Hamza Yusuf's talks were really good. He loved the talks. We would drive everywhere for his talks when he came to the East Coast. But he wasn't so much into this Morocco thing. Like, just study at Azhar, so I committed to it, and my dad let me go to the Morocco trip, and that really, that was a big change. because it was sort of like you were drying out in high school. You sort of, I wouldn't say losing interest, but you're losing your way in a sense. It happens. It could happen to anybody. You could lose your way. When you don't have good influences coming in and only bad influences coming in, eventually your ocean's going to get muddied up. And that was happening to me. And what is he going to do? Is he going to say no to this one thing that you're latching onto? And I was latching onto these tapes and videos. And here in New Brunswick was one of the, you could say, the stations of where Hamza Yusuf followers were. And they had all his tapes and videos here. That's where I got them from a brother named Sharif. Allah reward him for that and protect him and preserve him. And also a convert by the name of Dawood Friki. Yeah, he was huge in facilitating this. So, yeah, Mujahid's dad. And so he let me go on the trip to Morocco. That was a big deal. Some people were saying, why you let him go? These people are like Sufis and they're misguided. And he said, no, we just take the good and leave what's not good. Right? Take the good and leave the bad. So I went to Morocco, came back, of course, with all these crazy ideas. And I didn't even know how to handle them. I don't even really know what they were. All I knew was that this kind of Islam, I loved it personally. Because firstly, there were Americans. They're Americans. I felt like this is not foreigners. They're Americans like me. Secondly, I loved the everything Moroccan. The vibe was amazing. And the spirituality to me was a whole new thing, and it's what I needed. I needed dhikr. I needed it badly. And so I came back and took the misbah that I had from the house and started using it all the time. And like, what the heck? Misbah is like for decoration. We had misbahs all over the house, but it's for decoration. Not using it all day. So this started in the era of clash. The old era where everything is fine and everyone's on the same wavelength, that came to a sad ending. And now it's the era of clash, right? And we just fought about everything. But here's the thing. There was never a time where he said, I'm done with you. Your crazy ideas. And there was never a time that I was rude either, right? But to me, the most important thing, looking back, was that here you had a dad who relentlessly wanted to make sure his son doesn't go astray and fights for it and doesn't stop. But he also doesn't take it in a bad way to the fact that that's all we do. We still did all the other stuff. I didn't mention in high school, we had this great little tradition. Every Monday that was off, or summer times, I would actually go with my dad to court. I would attend the court cases. And then we would eat at the Pakistani tea house in Lower Manhattan with all these other chiseled Arab guys who loved the Afghan jihad and idolized the Afghan jihadis. And I loved those guys. They were great guys. One of the shuyukh in the Dawah circuit, he's also from that group, but I'm not going to say his name because he may not want it to be said. But after that, the court case was over, and on the way up, we'd, of course, get Dunkin' Donuts on the way up. And that was always fun. Get Dunkin' Donuts, Most dads were stiffs, to be honest with you. Most foreign immigrant dads were total stiffs. But my dad knew how to have fun. And so after that, we would go scalp Ranger tickets in Madison Square Garden. So I'm thinking to myself, on one hand, we're trying to bring the Khilafah and rule by Islamic law, right? I wonder what rule by Islamic law would say about Rangers games. Like, what would rule by Islamic law say about MSG, Madison Square Garden, and National Hockey League, right? So you're living in two different worlds. But we always did these other things my dad kept that up, even in the era of clash. And it was the era of clash. We just arguing all the time. But that arguing strengthened me. Number one, when you have a relentless opponent, you're going to die, give in. By die, I mean you're going to give in. Or you're going to become a snake. You're going to hold it in and be a munafiq. You're going to hold it in. And then you're going to bite when the time is right. And that is like the worst type of person. So you really only, or number 3, have some character. Say what you believe. Face the consequences. And that's the route that in the beginning, I couldn't really talk because I didn't know the books. But eventually, I would go into the books. And the number 1 source I'd go to is Imam Nawawi. I would go to Imam Nawawi's book because that's the one I knew he respected. If you brought Imam Nawawi's name, the conversation stopped, right? And he would capitulate to certain things. So that forced me to read a lot. Literally all the reading was that I learned Arabic was for argument's sake, because he really wanted to make sure that you leave off these things. Leave off all this dhikr. Right? Be part of the community. Fight for the oppressed. Do that stuff. But leave off this solitude and dhikr. This is not the Islam that we know. And that continued, and we would debate, but he always made sure that the father-son part remained. We always went to the garden. That never stopped. We always went to Ranger games or watched them on TV. That never ended. And so that part, I think that was an important thing, that even if a person's having a hard time with a kid of theirs, you gotta have the regular stuff. That's what's going to erase all the bad feelings. And that's what's going to be the bind between father and son. You always have to have those good times. And so having those good times made me not want to argue anymore. I don't want to have this clash. So I started to look at his perspective of things. And then he let me go to Yemen. I don't even know how that happened, right? He let me go to Yemen because it was like, okay, well, what else is there? If I say no to this, then what else is the alternative? So may Allah reward him, Omar Mahmoud, who's a doctor. He was, tell me if I'm going on too long. Am I going on too long? It was good? Okay. Because again, I understand people might not want to hear a story, but this is hopefully for everybody. Everyone has to have something good about a dad who paid attention. And if you're good, you'll see the good. If you're bad, you'll see the bad. That's my take. And sometimes they're bad, but if you're good, you'll see why and how people fall and make mistakes and have limitations. You have to judge your elders based on, not by your standard, but by the standard of what they had to work with. You know that at that time, we did not know what the word Salafi is. It's just Islam. That was it. It's just Islam. That was it. And we're all fine with that. Now, this knowledge from Morocco is shaking stuff up. And I thought to myself, though, these aren't the people to be enemies with. They can't be totally wrong either, because they're righteous people. They were people of Masajid. It shouldn't be like this. And so I started to look, why is this happening? Why is this clash happening? And that sent me deep into the books. But in any event, what was I saying? Omar Mahmoud, this shows you, by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that I had heard about Yemen, I had heard about Hadramaut, and never imagined forever that I would ever go there. But I'm sitting in Tom's River, sitting in Masjid Bilal, and a guy walks in, and I'm like, this young guy, he's one of Hamza Yusuf's students. I can tell right away. So I start talking to him. I said, where are you from? He said, I'm from California. I said, I could tell. And I said to him, you got to tell me everything about California, everything about Hamza Yusuf. And we're talking, and I said, well, what brings you here? He tells me, I'm on my way to Tarim. Put Omar Mahmoud's picture up. Yeah, that's him. Yeah, that's him. He says, I'm on my way to Tarim, Yemen. I'm like, oh, I heard about this. Hadramaut. Now why is he in Tom's River, New Jersey, of all places? It goes to show you, when Allah wants something to happen, it's going to happen. He's in Tarim, he's in Tom's River, New Jersey, because his uncle lives there. Who's his uncle? My mom's colleague at work. Subhanallah. So immediately, oh, you have to have lunch, you have to have dinner with us. So immediately my parents invite him to dinner. My mom calls his dad. Oh, your nephew's here. We're going to take him for dinner. Don't worry, we'll take care of him. My son's here. And this connection happens. I'm like, this is directly from Allah. This is impossible otherwise. There was no way ever I would have any connection with Yemen. And yet Omar Mahmoud comes, and my parents love him. They love him because he said he's going to study for 1 year, then go to medical school. That's the kind of person my parents wanted. Straight edge, professional. He was so respectful. He was so nice. And my dad liked this idea of me being closer to the Arabian Peninsula than Mauritania and Morocco. Right? That's him. That's Omar Mahmoud and Dar Mustafa. He actually looks like he fits. He's one of them, right? Because, you know, they're half, there's a lot of them who are half Arab and half Indonesian, while Omar Mahmoud is half Desi and half Filipino. Yeah. So, yeah, put that picture up. That's not me on the side. That's just Omar Mahmoud. Yeah. So, my dad says, this boy is a respectful young man. He's got a good head on his shoulders. If he thinks Yemen is good, then you can go to Yemen. And I'm like, no way. I'm going to Yemen, right? But I have to wait a year. So a year passes. It was like the longest, most miserable year ever, right? That year. And I'm barely clinging on. There's no activity in Brunswick. There's nothing. There's literally nothing. No teachers, no da'iyas, nothing. And Masjid al-Huda, they used to get people, but they didn't always get people. So that was the longest, most miserable year ever. And then finally, I did something really stupid and jeopardized the whole thing. Yeah, I had a Mustang. Parents had a Mustang. And I'm just racking up tickets on this Mustang, right? I'm just racking up tickets. And my parents are just paying them off. You can't not get tickets when you have a Mustang. Like, you hit the gas on this thing, it flies, right? This thing flies. I don't know the details. But this thing flew, I'm telling you. You touch the gas, I'm just racking up tickets. And then finally, after many warnings, I drove so recklessly, I totaled the thing. Totaled it. Okay? I got in so much trouble, you cannot imagine, right? Especially that I totaled it and I hit someone with kids. I hit a car with kids. And unfortunately, I couldn't even break the news normally. The news broke because my mom drove by the site of the accident. I was roasted. And that was it. Yemen's off the table. No, you're going to act like this. You don't deserve to go on a trip to Yemen. It was off the table. Right? I got so depressed. You cannot imagine. It was off the table. You can't imagine how depressed I was that I'm not going to Yemen. Right? And this is my junior year of college, which regularly would have been a sophomore, but I was a junior. And was so depressed. I was so depressed that I think my parents got worried. And then my dad said, I have some business in New York. You're coming with me. So I'm like, I'm in trouble. Like, this is the longest I've been in the doghouse. And I get there. I go with my dad. I don't know what we're doing. And then he surprised me by taking me to the Yemeni consulate, right? And there we get the visa. I couldn't believe it, right? I could not. I literally, when I was having a headache, I'm going to get to go to Yemen. Now, mind you, I don't know any shuyukh in Yemen. I know the names Habib Umar, Habib Ali. That's it. Right? That's it. People are asking about Shaykh Yahya. No, we had cross paths in New York, but we only became friends in Yemen on that trip. He arrived 40 days before I did. So, and back in the day when we went to Yemen, so after we got the visa, he said, well, where do I get the ticket? He said, go around the corner. There's a Yemeni Airlines office. We go around the corner. There's literally like, just imagine Arabs put an office together. We went to the actual Yemen airport, right? Dude, when we went to the Yemen airport last December, okay? Remember that, Omar? They didn't even know what to do in the airport. Omar was helping them. Omar Abbas, these are just a bunch of uncles. Omar Abbasi was literally working, right? He was sitting with these Arab guys, these Yemeni guys, helping them manage our trip of like, what, 20 guys, or something. And he's literally helping these Yemenis. It was laughable. And Omar was like, okay, no, match this passport to this person. Here's his visa. Like, what the heck? I've never.
I already told him, I'm like, I need some payment for this.
Yeah. He literally worked in the Seiyun Airport, which was a size of smaller than the masjid, NBIC. But in any event, we get to this office. Assalamu alaikum, marhaban, ahlan wa sahlan, tfaddal, nagib lak shay. Right? We're sitting in this this office, and a guy says, when do you need to go? Here's the ticket. This is how much. All right, my dad literally pulls out cash, gives him cash. The guy goes to the back room, prints a ticket from the computer. He prints the ticket from the computer. Then you had to take the ticket now that you're certain you're going. We went back to the embassy, the consulate, and they stamp your visa for you, stamp your passport now that you have the ticket. But literally we just print the ticket on this old printer. And then we went to eat at a Yemeni restaurant there in Astoria, Queens. That was like one of the best days of my life, that I'm going to Yemen. And I went to Yemen, and I came back with even more crazier ideas. Now I'm talking about aqtab and abdal. And khalas, my dad's going to pull his hair out, right? I'm in another world. He thought, okay, Yemen, they're going to be closer to Arabs, right? At least, yeah, it's close. Nope. They're for even more. If I had went to Mauritania with Murabat al-Hajj, there would be less talk of tasawwuf and all these other things, and khidr and all that, and aqtab and abdal. There's no talk. They never talk about that. You memorize Quran, you study fiqh, pray tahajjud, call it a day, right? But the impression is that Morocco and Mauritania, it's the cuckoo land. That's Egyptians' impression. And the Yemen are the Arabs like us, right? But of course, later on though, my dad grew to love the Habib. The more he learned about Habib, and Habib Ali, he broke with Habib Ali on politics, right? So he loved Habib Ali too. And he met Habib Ali, and he met Habib Umar. But only on politics did he break from Habib Ali. He says, and when it's Deen, he listened to all his lectures. Because Habib Ali started coming on TV and becoming famous. He's like, it's like honey, Habib Ali, when he talks. But on politics, no. Because he's too close to rulers, etc. Blah, blah, blah. And you know that manhaj is all about against the oppressive rulers. Like after the Shahada, it's that. After praying 5 times a day, you have to be against the rulers if they're oppressive, right? So when Habib Ali was soft on that subject, in his perspective, he cut off Habib Ali, right? But on the Deen side, he loved him. And Habib Umar was, believe it or not, only lately, last 5-10 years, was famous. But before that, Habib Ali was famous, Habib Umar was not. And so the one thing that eventually this era of clashing had to come to an end, and it did come to an end. The more we learned, the more we had access to actually listen to lectures, to meet people, it did, I would say, alhamdulillah, come to an end. And it became like he just disagrees with some things, but doesn't say it's like sinful. Okay. But of course he'll throw it in every once in a while. And YouTube came out, caused me a lot of grief, because he would get, you know, the electrocution Sufis, you know those guys? And he would say, there you go. And he would do one of those, there you go, right? Look, here are the Sufis for you, right? And I would fight. I would say, listen, there is a good part of this thing. It's not all these crazies. And that was literally my life goal, is to bring that into light. And at the end, he was totally fine with it. Now, finally the day came years later after I got married, and there's a picture of, yeah, you could put that picture up. Years later, all right, so I hadn't show you a picture of my dad and he came to be. So years later, Habib Umar comes to visit the U.S. and Shaykh Yahya says, "There's very few Dar al-Mustafa grads. You're not a grad. I'm not a grad, but you went and studied there. So listen, you're going to be part of the team." I hadn't seen Shaykh Yahya in years. "You're going to be part of the team." I said, "Okay. All right, you're going to arrange all the Connecticut talks." I was like, "Okay." New Jersey was not a thing on the map at the time. And Habib Umar came to my house. And then my because there was going to be so many men in the house, my dad came to be mahram, right, for my wife, because I'm going to be out and about, but my wife's going to be alone with all these other men. So my dad came, and I don't have the picture. I should have it where it's him and Habib Umar. So that was a great picture, because finally, that to me, the era of clash is over. When they met, and he loved Habib Umar. He also loved him for not just because he was nice to him, no, because he is not on record ever supporting any of these oppressive rulers. Not a word. So he used to always say, Habib Umar, his record on this issue is so honorable. He's not like the rest of these Sufi sellouts, right? So, and not like all of them are, but some of them are. And so that was, that era, alhamdulillah, came to a close, and then became like a nice era of the grandpa. But the point I said about the other thing is that it meant a lot to me that he would never let go. Wanted to make sure that, you know, what he believed was wrong and thought was wrong, that I didn't fall into it. And I thought differently. And I used to think, at some point, you must have driven your dad crazy, because I'm driving you crazy. You must have driven your dad crazy. I know that's not a great thought, but think about it. It has to be like that. Now, Elif, you're very much similar to me in that it's you and your dad all the time, right? You're the only son. So I actually recognize that. To me, the amount of time when you're the only son and there's not a huge family, you spend so much time with your dad, right? So much time. And so it ends up being that, alhamdulillah, we entered the grandparents phase. All right, Omar, you can bring the next picture. And the grandparents phase is the best. You should always pray to see your parents as grandparents, right? Because you're almost like, it's a different relationship. I'll tell you what the relationship is. It's grandparents and grandchild against the kid. That's how my dad took it. He said, you drove me crazy all these years. And I think in this case, probably we said she's not allowed to have chocolate, right? Oh, okay, send us a picture of what you guys are doing. Right? So he used to love to see my kids driving me crazy. He used to love that. He used to laugh at that. He said, alhamdulillah, I get to see justice, right? And of course he would be joking by that, but that's how he would always say it. He's like, oh, he's driving you crazy, alhamdulillah, right? What goes around comes around. But of course he was just joking about that. But the grandparents phase is a great phase, and my dad also made use of his retirement and went to Lebanon, Kashmir, and Chad on charity missions with the Qatar Red Crescent, right? And then lastly, every Muslim should keep in mind, Allah says, إِمَّا يَبْلُغَنَّ عِنْدَكَ الْكِبَرَ. You can go to the next slide. أَحَدُهُمَا أَوْ كِلَاهُمَا فَلَا تَقُلْ لَهُمَا أُفٍّ وَلَا تَنْهَرْهُمَا. Anytime that any of your parents get old with you, then don't say oof to them. And this is an important lesson for everybody. If you're a student of knowledge, you're a person of Islam and all that nice stuff, you got to pay attention to this, because we are not allowed to, we have to think of the guidance. Allah says in the Quran, we're not allowed to abandon them. You have to say, as Allah says, when they grow old with you, don't say oof. That points to the last phase of life where you're the caretaker now. And that happened a couple years ago, where the health just plummeted. And we were telling them, like, there was a phase I didn't like, when they're too old to be active, but they live far away. And I felt that was very damaging, because they're alone too much. And it was really my wife, and she was probably, I would say, probably a better child to parents than me. When you're the youngest in the family, you never have to worry about responsibility. You're the youngest. There's always an older sister to take care of things. You never think about that. So I never thought about me being the caretaker of my parents. I'm like the youngest in the family, right? I'm like the spoiled one in the family. But she was always the one who would say, you need to move here. You need to move closer to us. But they refused. They were stubborn. And she ended up, what ended up happening was that they had a domino effect of health causes. Very quickly, they had to move in. Alhamdulillah, I had a blast doing it. It was very stressful, but I enjoyed the concept that we built an extension in our home. We built an extension to our house, and I had seen some other people in the community do it. Built an extension to a house, and my parents moved into there. I felt like, oh, this is like a good deed. I'm actually doing a good deed for once. And when you're never the caretaker and never had to worry about that, you're always the youngest kid. You never worry about these things. Now you have to actually do it. And I felt like this is the right thing to do. You feel good on the inside. And then old age, it hits real fast now. At least for my dad, when there was nothing to do, no work to do. So it hit real fast, and it was not a fun 2 years. And I thought, man, old age is bad. Getting sick, getting skinny. But alhamdulillah, it was only 2 years. He really was old, really old for 2 years only, right? And it seemed, well, you don't know if this is going to be 10 years. And I thought to myself, okay, listen, when I'm old, I'm going to be healthy. We all say that, right? But I think, oh man, you know, that old generation does not care at all about health and fitness, right? Probably your dad doesn't care about health. It's not a concept, right? This idea of exercise, it's not a concept. Eating well, it's not a concept, okay? Eating well, this is like a hippie thing for him. No, you eat ethnic food. That's the right thing to do, right? The sweets, you eat them. That's the right thing to do. Kunafa, baklawa, sugar, tea. You put the sugar, pile the sugar onto the tea, right? That's the right thing to do as a sign that you're sticking to your heritage. Well, it's terrible for your body. But I say, alhamdulillah, the old age was only 2 years, right? It was only 2 years. And that's good because you'll never be old again. It's a phase. Just embrace old age. Embrace it when it comes because it's a phase. And it's going to go away. And alhamdulillah, now we have something that I also want to talk about, which is that we in Islam have a big gift called Isal al-Thawab. And Isal al-Thawab comes to us from a hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari that a Sahabi regretted that when his mom died, she couldn't give charity anymore. Obviously, she's dead. The Prophet ﷺ said, you can give it on her behalf. So that man, he said, oh, in that case, here's sadaqah from me, and this one is for Sa'd, meaning the thawab of it for Sa'd. So the phraseology you do for that is that you say that this charitable donation is for so-and-so, meaning that you intend the good deeds to go to that person. And it can be retroactive, meaning you could have already done it, not intending that, then intend it later, just as I can earn money intending it to be for myself, then change my mind and give charity. It's the same thing. So you can retroactively, you sit and recite Quran for an hour, you can retroactively say, okay, all of that, I intend it to so-and-so. And many people have sent to me to read Surah Al-Ikhlas 10 times as a hadith from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It builds a palace in paradise. And so if a person recites Surah Al-Ikhlas 10 times, then donates that to their deceased, it's a palace in paradise. And many people, they have regret. They think, I could have been a better kid. Or I wish I could help my parents. But it's too late. But we don't have that. Because even after their death, you can still help them. And one of the best things that would make parents happy is to keep in touch with their old friends. Right? That's from the hadith too. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned that too. And so these are some of the lessons that I felt everyone, from now on in our community, if someone loses a dad, they're going to sit and just tell stories. Because it strengthens people's love for the concept of father. I told you that in the top of the episode. There's a dark force in our society, whether you want to call it woke culture, whatever you want to call it, that's tearing down all these things. It's literally tearing them down. The Crusaders in suits, we happened to align. Not that I'm not happy that we align on that, but it happens to be that they believe in these types of things. But there are crusaders in suits, so we have no business with them. I have more to say about the crusaders in suits later, because they are crusaders. Most of these conservatives, 90% of them. But they happen to believe in that too. But there's another force in society that's always putting down dads and to destabilizing homes and destabilizing people and really rendering humans now to become these types of victims to be completely unstable people. And when they're unstable, you can take advantage of them. That's the whole goal. When you destabilize a kid and he has no dad, then you can take advantage of these people. The state will control them completely. And I think that's really what's behind it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's now take a couple Q&A. I hope I didn't go long, but again, the reason I did go long on this was really to focus on something specific, intending something general. This was a specific example of the importance of fatherhood and the perspective to have on it afterwards. That it's a good sign if you see all the good and you don't think of any of the bad. Although, of course, you can learn lessons. Everyone should learn lessons. But I think everybody should do this. And everyone, if you get a chance to be a dad, you should really be. Here's another one. Advice for father having only girls. You got to give them a lot of confidence. But you also got to make sure shaitan doesn't get to them. Because shaitan can get to girls very easily in a different way than he gets to boys. You got to be that protective person. Okay? Got to be protective in that respect. I personally think the same way that we have qasidas and mawlids and things and dhikr gatherings, the Iblis's version are these pop stars in these concerts and pop music. I think it is. It's leading nowhere except to either it's immediately ghafla from the Quran. Done. Right? Ghafla from the Quran. That's number one. Qasida doesn't do that. In fact, and if anything, it's the break, because Allah calls the Quran qawlan thaqila, and it reinforces the message of the Quran. Quran is heavy. Qawlan thaqila. You can't. Some hearts can't always take Quran. It's heavy for them. They need something lighter. So qasida, it's good. It's a soft version of reinforcing the same message. But that other stuff, and that pop culture and the music in that pop culture, if you ask me, number one, it's immediate, wipes the Quran right out of your mind, takes you away from it, and does not reinforce that message. In fact, it's bringing you a message of desires and shahawat and, these types of things. We all know what it is. Okay, so you got to protect. I think daughters dads got to be aware of this stuff. And sometimes you have to be a bad guy. You got to be a bad guy. Okay. What do you suggest for a mother who has to raise her child alone? So that mom should take advantage of the local masjid. And if there's youth groups, then they should go to those youth groups. And we have a woman here who raised 2 sons, wonderful sons, all alone. And one of the things she did was she always put them with she would always put them in the youth groups, right? And you know who we're talking about, and they're great men now, I would say. Well, one is still cooking in the oven, and the other's graduate, married, works, and he's a leader. There's nothing off about him at all. He hangs out with guys. He hangs out with the guys in the masjid, and that's the solution. When I was in London, same thing. Woman, I think her dad had died. Her husband had died. And she decided to homeschool her kids because they were getting so crazy, out of control in the public schools there. And her method of homeschooling was, back in the day, you ordered the books and you just worked on them. She'd wake up, have breakfast with the kid, do a couple homework assignments. By dhuhr, she's in the masjid. And she was Moroccan. The workers in the masjid were Moroccan. She said, take these boys, put them to work for a couple hours. The boys would work for 3-4 hours. I saw them. In the course of a year, They were the worst, most rotten kids. But in the course of a year, I remember by the end of that year, they carried in Ramadan. They carried. They worked so hard in Ramadan. And they were in the masjid so much, they got purified. They got cleansed. So she used the men in the masjid to help raise her kids. And they did. No doubt about it. When I saw them in Ramadan, I'm like, this is another human being. And they were in the bad era, like 7th and 8th grade, when you're bad. And they matured so quickly because they're around these men all the time. And they viewed the men as their like replacement of their dad. And their men started giving them responsibilities. My father is stingy, says Oscar, easily gives money to outsiders. When it comes to his own children and wife, he is financially stable, but still tortures emotionally. What to do? If you're a boy, if you're a man, he doesn't owe you anything. He does not. But if you're only a child, or you're in middle school or high school, then yeah, you're going to be hurt by it. But you should learn a lesson. Learn a lesson not to be like that. But once you become mature enough, you're on your own. You got to earn yourself. He doesn't owe it to you. Even though, of course, stinginess is bad, that doesn't change that. And you said he gives to others. Yeah. So you're right about that, but don't. Oscar is a woman. Okay.
Wait, not necessarily, right?
What he owes you is just a place to sleep, safety, and also you need and food. That's all he owes you. So we have to go by rights. Of course, it's bad for him to do this, but you got to earn some other way. Yeah, maybe, I don't know, sell Himalayan salt on TikTok or something. I'm saying that as an online business, right? Get into an online business. Take a loan from somebody, get an online business, sell something, and make some more money for yourself. But we just have to go by the law, right? By the law, yeah, he's stingy. That's no good. But you got to earn from somewhere else. Or marry. Get married and have another life. And I'm... Okay, here's another question. Any advice how to protect a father's legacy after death? Today, a Muslim work crew cut down the tree my father planted right before he returned to Allah 10 years ago, trying to contain my anger. Well, you could, inshallah, you could still get the hasanat by planting another tree. Okay, think about it. It's not the tree you care about, it's the reward, right? So don't get so angry just about the tree. It's a tree. Okay, but what matters is the reward. So your chance for you to plant a better tree, and intend the reward of the fruit of that tree to go to your parents, to your dad. Fasili Lafia, can I do salawat to strengthen my dua? There is nothing that strengthens your dua more than salawat. It strengthens dua so much that some people say you get what you want. It makes you mujab ad-dawah. 5, 10, 15,000. Okay. What if your wife has issues with your parents? Meaning her in-laws, your parents. You have to protect your wife from being abused by your parents, and you have to stop your wife from abusing your parents, and between them is nothing. There are no obligations between parents, your parents and your wife. She owes them nothing except respect. She doesn't have to work for them. They owe her nothing except respect. Is there any guidance or virtue in leaving the city to live in a rural community? Yes, there is. There is a virtue in that, and the virtue is that it's pure. But the virtue of living in the city is you can do more good deeds. So both of them have virtues. But some of our cities today, they're not places to raise kids and have family. What does it mean when you dream of a scholar? A scholar could be a symbol of knowledge. It could be a symbol of Islam. It could be a symbol of the Sunnah. And it could be a symbol of his name, whatever his name is. And Allah knows best. What institutions did you visit in Fez? It was Qarawiyyin. Qarawiyyin. For me to know, thank you very much. I very much appreciate that Isar Thawab. It's a good thing for us to do for any time someone's family dies. We have to be there with them. We got to be there with them. We have to support them. Hey Omar, I'm going to send you something for an event that we're running. Whose WhatsApp is open? Yours? It's Alif?
The youth thing?
Yeah. You saw that?
I saw it, yeah.
Okay, let's go back to some Q&A. Tell me when it's up, Omar. I'm the youngest of aging parents too, says Neba. I believe they get upset and forget easily too. What's the best way to serve them? Just keep in mind that it's a short phase and you don't want to do anything you're going to regret. So just don't do anything you regret and do the best you can. That's it. Ladies and gentlemen, the Devil's Deception is a little mini youth conference that was actually asked by some youth to have this conference. It's for high school and college students only. No adults are allowed and no registration is required. Dr. Hatim al-Hajj is going to talk to us about Shaitan's, the Devil's Deception in religious argumentation. Sheikh Ismail Bowers is going to talk about the Devil's Deception in chasing our desires. I'm going to the Devil's Deception on the plots and plans of atheists. And Ryan is going to be the moderator throughout. He's going to talk about all these subjects in between. And he's going to bring his own commentary too on everything after each talk. And he's going to lead the Q&A session. And we're going to be there at ISCJ in the multi-purpose room. No adults, only high school and college age students. And then we're going to have a nice long Q&A session because the youth wanted this. So again, the main topics are the trap of religious argumentation. Constant jidal, arguing over religion, and this guy's a mubtada, and this guy's this, that, and the other. The second one is your desires. And maybe I think the desires should be brought forth first. The desires. I mean, this is a war. Shahawat in this day and age, I don't know how the youth do it. They got all the zina right at their own fingertips. SubhanAllah. And then I'm going to talk about the plots, the satanic plots, how Shaitan messes with our heads with false arguments, with lies, or false logic. Which is going to be, that's the hardest talk to give, because when you're talking to youth, there's no visual there, right? So I'm going to have to make it clever. And then, of course, Ryan Gillenhammer is closest to them in age, and he'll moderate the whole thing, which is actually a hard part for him. He's got to talk about all of them before, and he's got to pull it all together afterwards. So again, that's Friday, October 24th at 7 p.m. at the Islamic Society of Central Jersey, right here. That's our neighbor, 8 miles away, and it's co-sponsored by our Masjid MBIC and Nur al-Iman School, and maybe they'll give extra credit in the Islamic studies classes if you show up, and then we'll sign off that you went. And it's going to be packed because the YMs are already committed to coming, according to what some people are telling me. And even some of the MSAs are all committed to coming. So I think it's going to be a great night for us to all to talk, get together, and we got to know our enemy. Iblis inna ash-shaytana kana lakum aduwwan fattakhidhuhu aduwwa. Satan is an enemy. All right, take him as an enemy. There's a hadith from the Qudsi. Where's my hadith Qudsi book? It's not here. There's a hadith Qudsi that says, so long as your enemy is your enemy, you don't take your eyes off him, which means at all time. You never Stop thinking about what is Shaitan's play here. How can Shaitan ruin me here? I hope to see all you there. Jazakumullah khair. Wassalamu alaikum. Okay, so that's the promo there. Let's see other Q&As here before we wrap up for the day. Zulu Ganger. I reverted 6 months ago, and I have a year and a half old child with a non-Muslim out of wedlock. Mom is slow to accept Islam. Any tips? Yeah, it's going to be all about you and your good conduct. Not talking. It's good conduct. Good conduct. Which means that maybe you marry this woman. If not, you make sure they're taken care of financially. But I think that take care of the woman you had a child with. What happened to the Egyptian blind sheikh? He passed away a couple years ago. May Allah have mercy on him. Are you coming to Pearls of Quran Conference? Yes, I'm coming, inshallah. Pearls of Quran Conference in Virginia this Thursday night after classes. My underage sons, 8, 10, and 12, have to miss school to attend Jummah at the request of their father. Do they have to? No, they do not have to. Only after bulugh is Jummah wajib. But if he wants to get them used to want to pull them out of that environment, it's better than school, right? I don't even believe in most schools, to be honest with you. I think they're more harm than good. But to give IDK channel man the answer to that question, I guess she's using her son's channel here. But no, it's not obligatory in Sharia to do that. They can go to school. And to go to Jummah is better. Azhar Osman, you guys know him? He's a comedian. And he's been very successful in the world of Chicago, in the comedy clubs in Chicago. But he told a story one time, and he was in a very good spiritual state. I remember that day. You know, you can sort of tell. His eyes well up a lot. And he told a story about his dad. I don't know if his dad had passed away or just was older, but he said that when he was young, hardly any Muslims in Chicago, you never really felt very confident about things because you're the odd man out, right? And I'm not saying he said that, but I'm saying that's how people would have felt in the 80s. It's not like today. Today you walk around and half of South Brunswick is from India, right? 90% of Edison is from the subcontinent. North Brunswick is all diverse, right? You know, North Brunswick is the most diverse town in the most diverse county, which is Middlesex County. Back in the old days, it's all just whites. Anyway, he told a very simple story of his father that they would take these road trips. And to show you that when your heart is clean, Allah takes something very normal and he makes it have meaning. And he said that we would just take these trips and I'd be bored out of my mind in the car. And one of the funny things about his dad, he said that his dad would make the chai wherever he was. Him and his mom would take chai supplies and make it even when they were chair. And the idea of drinking tea outside the house is out of the question. But to me, and he said, I wish I can go back to that and have that car ride again with my parents. But the reason the takeaway from that is that when your heart is clean, you view everything as good. It's amazing. It's a gift that Allah gives you. Where somebody may view something really good as bad if their intent is not good and if their heart's not clean. Any way to help my revert wife make more Muslim friends? I benefited from the masjid, but it's not active for women there. Tough question, but go around to a lot of different organizations, events, masajid, etc., until Allah opens the door for a friend to come around. You have to have friends. So try to do that. You go around to a lot of other places. Here's a question. In the Maliki method, do you look down in sujood or towards the qibla? Oh, that was always funny. Memory to think about. When I came back from Morocco praying with my arms down facing up in an Egyptian household, that's not going to last half a rak'ah. But no, the Maliki, the Mandub is to face straight or down. Both of them are acceptable, but the majority is to look straight in Salah as opposed to down at the Qibla. That's one of the unique things when someone becomes a Maliki is they look straight and they pray with their arms down. And that was another one of those things that was a shock. But eventually we just got it. We learned. We learned that there's madhahib. There's reasons that there are madhahib. When you learn a certain type of Islam, it's Quran, Sahih Bukhari, Fatawa Ibn Taymiyyah, and then you read milestones when you're starting out. Before you read 40 Nawawi Hadith or after, you read Sayyid Qutb's milestone. That's the curriculum right there. If you're really smart and knowledgeable, you also read Ibn Hajar Asqalani's Fath al-Bari. And you also read Nawawi's Riyadh al-Salihin. It's a very simple curriculum. Life was so simple, right? And then all of a sudden, now you're learning madhabs and fiqh, and there's other opinions. And there's some people who don't use Ibn Taymiyyah at all as a resource, and you're like, what's wrong with these Muslims, right? Are they even Muslims still, right? Are they even from Ahl Sunnah? You go to Moroccan scholars, and he'll never mention Ibn Taymiyyah once. Why would he? He's a Maliki. Ibn Taymiyyah is a Hanbali from Syria. He's a Maliki from Morocco, right? Mauritania. May not even own one of his books. But it's never, you know that the Malikiyah do not accept the phrase Shaykh al-Islam for anybody. He said there's no Shaykh of al-Islam. No, of the madhab. There's no Shaykh of all of Islam. But we grown up, that's Shaykh al-Islam, right? That's the order. You want to know about talaq, you look up talaq in the Quran. You want to know the rules of, you can't find it in the Quran, you look in Sahih Bukhari chapter on talaq. Can't find it there, you go to Ibn Taymiyyah's Fatawa. Okay? That was it. But then now you're coming with all this other new knowledge and madhahib and all these things. And it was a necessary shock, though. Knowledge is necessary. The truth has to come out. And the sincere will accept it. And we did come to a even balance, right? Like we did come. It wasn't even about like, oh, this is not the right way to pray. It's more like, what are people going to say? Right? You can't go go against the grain. Don't go against the grain. No one wants their son to go against the grain. You want your son to continue, like to be living happily with all your friends, right? And no one wants your son to go. So that was really more of the issue of don't go against the grain. I don't want anyone to say anything bad about you. That was more of the issue than the actual mas'ala. Is it wajib to obey parents in all things? No. What if they told you to do something haram? It's wajib to obey them in what is permitted, let alone what's recommended and obligatory. And you have to obey them in the makruh too. If it's makruh, you have to obey them. Is it makruh to do something halal that parents don't approve of, such as doing a hairstyle a certain way for men or women? Well, how old are you is the question. And the hairstyle is not the question. It's upsetting them. That's the question. So if they don't like you to grow your hair long or cut it short, that cutting it is not the issue. It's upsetting them. So if you end up doing it because you really want to, at least cover it in their presence and don't let them know about it. You know, by the way, I have to apologize about something because Masjid Mustafa, the first mosque that my dad had a fight with because they wanted elections. And he was like dead against elections, no elections, right? When things are good, you just have a benevolent dictator. That's it. And that's how things are good. And you have a shura, okay? And you bring in the youth, yeah, no problem. But we're not having elections. I think I may have accidentally sort of threw him under the bus, which I felt bad about, right? Because some of that member of that community was there at the masjid. So, no, they disagreed about the election part of things, but alhamdulillah, what was good about it was because they all became friends after 20 years, right? And that goes to show community. When you last long with people, you trust each other, you tolerate a lot of the good and the bad from them. All right, we got to go. It's 3:20. Adif's got classes, don't you, Adif?
Today I'm good.
You're good? Okay. Do Muslims still have to follow punishments of Quran and Hadith like lashes or stoning? We will only have that privilege if we ruled, right? And of course, for us, We're just citizens. It's not on us. It's a fard upon the ruler to apply those. Yes, they're not. That's not like slavery where, alhamdulillah, the emancipation has all happened. Khalas, we don't need to revive the institution of slavery. No, hudud punishment is not like that. If a guy commits murder and we know for sure, he should get executed. Why should he live? Right? Lashes is the best way to heal society. The worst way to heal a criminal, put him with other criminals in jail. Let him do nothing but sleep and get tattoos and do push-ups all day and talk to other criminals. How does this benefit anyone? Get free food. How does this benefit anyone? If he's sitting there, he's not benefiting. If he's knocking out license plates, which they say they do, they make license plates, they mow the lawn. Okay, then what's slavery? That's slavery. By Sharia, you don't have the right to do that. You can't take someone as a slave because he committed a small crime or a big crime. You punish him. That's it. The moment the judge says guilty, khalas, take him, go outside the courthouse in public, give him some lashes, make him limp home, and let his kids snicker and laugh, and all the kids laugh at him, and they say, oh, I'm never going to go to jail now, right? Because seeing the big tough gangster, okay, you're limping home and you can't sit down and go to the bathroom even. You need like a because your rear end has been striped, right?
Lashes don't even make you live.
Our Sharia lashes are too easy, subhanAllah. So we're going to have to go ta'ziri punishment here. Ta'ziri punishment, he can maybe increase them. But no, the Sharia lashes, you cannot use your hips. You can't like pivot, number one. You can't use two joints, elbow or shoulder. You have to pick one. So either elbow like this or shoulder like this. You can't use anything that would be thin enough to cut the skin or heavy enough to break the bone. So basically like a belt. A belt will not, a wide belt, wide piece of leather with a handle will neither break the bone nor will it break the skin. I'm thinking to myself, this is generous. Ask any guy who's going to jail for 10 years or 5 years or 3 years even. Would you rather go out there and get 40 lashes or go to spend 3 years in jail? I'll tell you 40 lashes. But it's got to be public. Got to be public. It'll be a great YouTube channel, right? Go see if any of your friends are up there.
Like, prison is too abstract to be like a real deterrent.
It's not a deterrent.
Like, when people think about prison, it's just too abstract. But when you think about like,
I'm
I'm going to get hit.
going to get hit. You're going to get hit. You're going to get hit. Awais Akbani is asking about the Haramain al-Sharifin. Yes, of course they pray behind them. They always do. Just Another Human says, I have a clash similar to my dad. I said, just don't talk about it. I would say, don't talk about it. Don't make it worse. Don't argue. But and learn your evidences too. And by the way, parents may be right. Your parents may be right about certain things. So always consider that as part of it too. That's also part of it. Ladies and gentlemen, سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله.